Welcome welcome all to episode, hold your breath, 144 of Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Jackkadis, and if you have any interest in supporting this show, helping me out and doing what I do, then please send me an email at jackkadis@gmail.com. That's Jack, J-A-C-K-L, Kadis, K-A-D-I-S @gmail.com. I am having a blast. I just woke up. I guess I couldn't. How could I be having a blast? It's tricky, dude. Can I just be honest with you? This is like the hardest. I don't even know what to say. Like every word compounds off the next word, and so it's like you're constantly setting a tone or whatever. And I just don't. And I like or whatever. I'm hyper aware of what I say and how I sound. So it makes it hard to even speak, like say any words. And I like how does anyone, I mean, I don't even know what's going on. I got no idea. What's going on. So here we are chilling and, that's how it be. Shout out to somebody. It's hard. Doing this is very hard. Doing it alone is even harder. It's so tricky, man. It's so tricky. I haven't actually checked my email, so we could check that really fast. Maybe over the past couple episodes, I've gotten an email or two. I doubt it though. I've asked for emails before. Yeah, no email. Wise cut, man. Service reports, social, Rocket Money. Yeah. So I'm just here being silent, talking sometimes not. And we are keeping it real. The Hurricanes play tonight, and I'll be going. I don't work today. Therefore, I slept in like 4 hours, and now I have a headache. Why is that such a thing? Like, why is that such a thing? I don't know. It's such a weird thing for me to sleep in like this. Like, why do I do this to myself? I have no idea. It is so strange. I wish I didn't. I don't know why I do. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's okay and it's not a big deal, but I still what else am I going to talk about here? I was going to watch, I think a really good idea, my mom gave me a very good idea, is to watch a movie or a TV show with the purpose of making an entire Keeping It Real episode about that movie or TV show. And I think that's genius. I think that I could do, like an entire review or like, I think, so coming up, I'm going to have to pre-record like 10, 11, 12-ish episodes. So that means on 10 or 11 or 12-ish days, I'll have to do double recordings. And on those days, I think it'd be a good idea to watch a TV show and then I could talk about that. I think that'd be a good idea. I think that would be a good idea. I just turned the fan off at the AC, so this audio should be a lot more crisp, a lot more quality than usual because I managed to figure out how to turn off the fan. I am looking forward to, I'm excited about. Today, I kind of stacked my day today, and I caught myself yesterday. Yesterday, I was at work, and I was like, I should invite a ton of people over to my place in a week for like a party, like a gathering. And I was like, that's such a good idea. Oh my God, where's my phone? And then I'm like, hold on. Why am I doing this? That is a bad idea. Because just recently I already tacked on dinner with a relative. I'm even going to see a friend for a little bit before dinner with relative. And I'm going to see a Hurricanes game. And I expect myself to get this done in the morning. And I wanted to get a haircut today. That's all not going to happen. So why in the world would I be like, I want to have people over at my place? Like, of course I want to. It's not that I don't want to. But you have to be realistic with the expectations that would, what would I want? What would I want before I invited people over? Even if it was a week in advance, even if it was 2 weeks in advance. Well, I want my place to be clean. And may I say, it has been getting cleaner. It used to be getting dirtier each day, and now each day it gets a little bit cleaner. So that's a good trend. I would want to have at least 2 to 3 episodes pre-recorded for my trip at the end of June. I would want, to. I mean, that's about it. And so if I can get ahead, then that's the kind of thing that would be okay for me to do. Like, hey, people, I'd like to have all of you over because I think that would be very fun and interesting and exciting and fun. So, hold your breath. Because it's Tuesday. That means that I've got an itchy toe. Last night I took the trash out and a bug must have bit me on my toe because it itches. I've got thoughts. I've got responses to thoughts. I've got the realization that, hey, relax. This episode, it's not that stressful. It's not a bad episode. Just keep on doing your thing. You know what I'm saying? It's good that you turn the viewfinder away right when you start recording. It's bad to look at yourself for this amount of time. It's also good that you're not, looking over at the bar number, seeing how much longer you have, or seeing, it's best that you're just looking into the camera and talking. You don't always have to talk, but just do the things that help, which are turn the viewfinder away and don't look at the amount of time we've been filming / time we have left to film. When this episode wraps up, I won't have time to film the rest of my film stuff that I film every day because I'll be going right to see a friend for lunch. Or not lunch, but I definitely want to eat something. I might, it'd be nice if I could find the time to maybe cook. I think I could. I feel like it would take less than 15 minutes to cook and 5 minutes to eat. I don't think that would be outrageous for me to try to do, is to cook a bunch of pasta and eat it in less than 15 minutes. Because it only takes, 9 to 11 minutes to cook. And if I just kept it boiling, I'm sure that I could. But water takes time to boil. I don't know. I could just dump it in the pot before it even starts to boil. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It would just taste, as long as I could get those carbs in me before my bike ride. I don't want my stomach to be eating itself when I'm sitting down for dinner with my grandma, because that's just going to turn into a bad thing. I'm just going to wolf my food down. And then the Hurricanes play the Florida Panthers in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and I get to go see it in Lenovo Center. That's exciting. I hope we win. But it's weird. I used to be obsessed over it, but now I'm just kind of yeah, I'll go. Now I'm most excited to go with my 2 cousins. So to explain to you what I do, to back up a bit, you might be thinking, wait, well, why'd you pass that? What exactly are you talking about when you say that you're not gonna be able to get the rest of your filming stuff that you film done? Well, this is my thinking, and this is what I believe. After my Keeping It Real episode every day, I film there. My day is very much split into 2 parts, right? There's the recording part, and there's the camera part, the live action part, and then there's the computer editing part. So I try my best to get all of the camera part out of the way in one chunk. But when I sleep in like this, which it's really unacceptable, and I don't want to beat myself up, but I mean I gotta beat myself up. It's ridiculous. Like I had more than ample time to wake up and get all the recording stuff done at the very least. I mean, in a perfect world, I could have woken up, got all the recording stuff done, gone and got a haircut, came back, done all the computer stuff, and then been totally done for the rest of the day. But instead, instead I just was like, let's tack it on to tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, tonight. And like, I'm going to get home from the game so late, and I have work tomorrow, and it's silly for me to have done this to myself. I feel, ridiculous, but it's all right. It'll be okay. I'm not, one thing is for certain though, I want to plug in my bicycle because I'm going to be taking that. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure that's plugged in. It'll take me about 10 seconds. That thing is almost fully charged. Let me fill this cup of water too. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. I got water. Bike's charging. Oh, yesterday's episode was a mess. The audio went out. Probably started with no audio for you because the file just didn't even save. It's ridiculous. But now we're back. Whew. I mean, don't you just love a big, nice headache? Sorry, I'm thinking. About what? Who knows? I don't know. I'm... PMA, positive mental attitude. Dude, I think a bug actually bit me in between my two toes. Actually, it looks like I just stepped on a piece of glass or something. Yeah. I have just a cut in between my toes. That's not fun, but it'll be all right. damn. Oh, thank you all for coming out. My name is Jack Kadis. Let's do a movie review. Movie review. It's a movie review. Movie review. It's a movie review. Today's movie review is going to be on Breakfast at Tiffany's. From apparently the 1950s? Jeez Louise. Okay, so the movie starts out with this beautiful woman, Audrey Hepburn. Oh my God. I often make these jokes, about you ever hear about sirens? Like they would hear women singing and they'd jump overboard and get killed. But that would work on me. And Audrey Hepburn could get me to do a whole lot more than jump overboard. And she's singing. Wait, sorry. Let's back up. So she gets out of a taxi cab in New York City. Already got me hooked there in New York City with a beautiful woman. And she walks up to this big granite building. And I think granite is red, right? I think so. But who's to say if it really was granite? I don't know. Point is, it's just this beautiful building. And she's walks up to the window looking at the jewelry. Hold on. I have to sneeze. Okay, so what was I saying? So she gets out. She's in this beautiful black dress, and she has these pearls draped over her shoulders, like as a necklace, but like there's equal hang on her back and her chest. And she walks up to this window with this. She's got this beautiful. She's all done out with like the hat and the earrings and everything. And she walks up to the window, and there's a little ledge on the window, and she's looking at the jewelry inside because this is Tiffany's jewelry store. And it says that above the window or the door somewhere. It says Tiffany's. You can tell it. You can this is Tiffany's. And the movie's name is Breakfast at Tiffany's. So you're starting to draw this sort of like picture of what's happening. And then she takes out a baguette from her white paper bag and takes a bite. And then takes a sip of her coffee. And that's where she eats. And then she takes another bite, another sip. And then she's walking to the next window. And that's the start of the movie, eating breakfast at Tiffany's. So then I believe what happens next is we are introduced to where she lives. And this is, all of this comes together to show you why this movie is such a fantastic movie. Because I think it's beautiful. I think the start is beautiful. Right? It's like, okay, this is our main character, and the movie's name is Breakfast at Tiffany's, and this is our main character eating breakfast at Tiffany's. Bang, no questions asked. Like that, it's important to be really real with what you're doing with the camera, right? And I think the director, whoever he or she was, nailed it. Bang. First shot is literally the title, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Then the next scene, we're introduced to her building, her apartment, and where she lives. And this is where, so it's funny because Breakfast at Tiffany's, we'll later learn, is very much so a happy place for our main character, a safe place. Our main character goes by Holly, and she states that Tiffany's is just the most wonderful place in the world. How could you ever? She says sometimes she feels red. And she says, how some people get the blues and they get sad sometimes? Well, sometimes I just get really anxious and worked up and I just feel red. And the only thing that can ever calm me down and get me to not feel red anymore is Tiffany's. How could you ever feel red in a place like Tiffany's? That's later something we learn about our main character. So it's amazing when you think back to that first scene, how she seems so composed and beautiful and in control of her own world and everything when she gets to that tab and takes those slow steps to the windows at Tiffany's, because we didn't realize it at the time, but when it happened, the red was draining out of her body, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, next scene, we're introduced to her building and her upstairs neighbor. And this is a very interesting point, because this is where we'll see a recurring theme of things that wouldn't fly in movies today. Like things that would seem outdated, I guess, in movies today. I guess you could say outdated is a good word. I don't know. But she gets in the door, and I think, to be honest, I think what happens next is, oh geez, I don't know. I think what goes on in the next shot is she arrives back at her house, and as she's going into her house, which is strange that this all happens in the morning, right? You'd think that this sort of interaction would happen at nighttime, but it's morning because she just had a bite of her breakfast, but maybe she had been awake all night, and it would make sense that she was, because she was in that black dress, which we later learned. So she enters the front door of the apartment, and in, watching her enter and, chasing her is a gentleman, and the gentleman is like, hey, wait a minute, hey, and she kind of like acts like she doesn't see him and closes the door, and it's a two-step entry. Like, there's the first door and then there's the second door, and in between the two doors you have to buzz up and someone has to let you in, or you have to have a key, and she doesn't have her key, so she buzzes her upstairs neighbor, whom the camera cuts to, and he is asleep, but he wakes up, he sits awake in his bed and bangs his head on like a Chinese light. And he has these obviously fake teeth that stick out crazy buck style. And he's got this makeup on his face to make the teeth look like they fit and kind of protrude his whole mouth. And it's clear that they're like trying to, it might be, I think it's Chinese. And at the time, I guess there was world wars happening. So there was general angst when it came to the, Japanese or, I don't know, but it was just like they portrayed him as like super ugly. And it was kind of just like, damn, like, what? Like, that's crazy. And, so, that's how we're introduced to the upstairs neighbor. And so finally he lets her in, but as she's climbing the stairs, the guy is following her, and then he comes to the I guess the railing of the staircase, and he's shouting down the stairs, and he's like, "This is the last time, I'm serious. You cannot keep on making this noise and waking me up and buzzing my apartment. I'm gonna call the police." And she is like totally unfazed. You can tell that this is the kind of thing that probably happens pretty often. She doesn't mind that he's yelling at all. And she gets into her apartment and shuts the door. And the man that's following her banging on the door. And this is the second time that we see how outdated this movie is, because that is inappropriate for a man to chase a woman and bang on his door like that. That would never happen in today's world. But it's happening here. And he's banging on the door, and as he bangs, he's making more noise. So the Chinese guy comes back out, and he yells at her again, and yells down again, like, get out of here, get out of here. And the man finally leaves. So then it's just her in her apartment. We see where she lives. It's kind of a mess. But our next scene is, of course, I mean, in a movie like this, you just kind of know what's happening. Our next scene, we cut down to the street in front of her building, and this beautiful man gets out of a taxi cab with his luggage, and you are automatically just like, wow, what a beautiful man. And he walks up to the apartment, goes in, and he doesn't have a key. And he does the same thing where he decides to buzz into the building, but he buzzes her room. So for a change, she's woken up by getting buzzed. So she comes down and presses the button, and I guess it's funny because she just lets him in. She doesn't there's no intercom. I think you don't get to talk to the person. It's like a buzzing noise, and you get to decide if you want to let the buzz in or not. But she lets him in, and so he comes up the stairs, and he lives one floor above her, I think. And so as he's passing, he knocks on her door because he knows that he buzzed that apartment number to thank her for letting him in. And she opens the door kind of sleepy-eyed, out of it, kind of like a mess, I guess you could say. She opens the door like a mess. And he says, "Thanks for letting me in." And she says, "Would you like to?" And I think right off the bat, she opened the door and realized that he was such a beautiful man because she invited him in. And then this is the first time that these two characters meet. So she's in her place, and she invited him in, and he's kind of admiring how there's barely any furniture. He's looking around. There's a couch made out of a tub, and that's about it. And then, she's kind of like, okay, it's time for me to get ready. I have somewhere to be. And I believe it's revealed. I think it's revealed at this point in the movie that she makes money from sexual favors. I didn't catch on directly. I mean, I kind of felt a weird vibe, but you never know what vibes really mean when the movie is 70 years old or 60 years old. 70 years old. So it's mentioned that she is getting paid $50 for the powder room. And today that would be like $300, $400 for an escort. But back then it was just she would be paid $50 for the powder room. And that meant that men would give her $50, and then the powder room just really implied that she would give them sexual favors. So our man, doesn't, he hears this, and he's still just he's kind of just curious. He's asking a lot of questions. Or kind of, not really, but he's also just being a very gentlemanly man. He's very much doing as he's told. She keeps asking him to help her out. She asks him to find an alligator shoe underneath her bed, and this and that. I think he grabs a couple other things throughout the time that he's in her apartment. And then she finishes getting ready, and she says, "Thank you." She comes out, and he's like, "Wow, you look great," because she's all cleaned up now. And she says, "I couldn't have done it without you." And that's very sweet, I thought. And so then she rushes out and leaves. And I remember she leaves. She's a very carefree girl because she, lets a stranger into her house. She's someone that, exchanges her body for money. She has a cat whose name is Cat. She never gave the cat a name. Her apartment's very barely furnished. She seems to get by just barely money-wise. And as she runs out the door, because she explained to the gentleman that she's getting ready because she has to go meet an older man that she always meets on Thursdays who, gives her a message to give to someone else about the weather in a certain place. And it's it's we either pick up on it then or learn later that is because this person is part of the mafia. So that brings another sort of aspect to the storyline. And so this gentleman, is there for this whole experience. She gets ready, and then she, on the note of her being carefree, just leaves the apartment. And so he's just there in her apartment. I mean, I think I remember this correctly. But I'm pretty sure she runs out the door in front of him, which is I just remember thinking, like, that's so crazy for a woman to just, like, rush out and leave her place. I guess, I know it's not that crazy, but it contributes to the character of Audrey Hepburn, Holly. And you very much are like, wow, not like, it's very like gravitating. You think this is a beautiful woman and she has not a care in the world. And that is, it's like in a weird way, it's just very attractive. And then you have this handsome guy that's like clearly is taking a liking to her. And so you clap your hands together and think, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a movie. What's next? Well, next up, it cuts directly to, I think the very next time that these two characters interact, she gets home late at night, and this time another guy's following her, go figure, which, I mean, I guess is not go figure, but I guess it's funny to see that that's actually like a common thing in her life. Like, men used to just follow you home. Like, like that's crazy. In the 1950s, if you were a woman, sometimes men would just follow you home. Isn't that nuts? But anyway, so she manages to, I think this guy got into her house. So we find her and she's locked herself in her bathroom. And from her bathroom, she's able to access the fire escape, and she climbs up one story to the gentleman's house that she met earlier in the morning that just moved in. And she sees... Oh, in between these two shots, we get a little bit more a picture of in between these two scenes, before the drunk man follows Holly home, we get to know a little bit about this guy. And this guy is, I believe, an escort also? I have no idea. He has this woman who is supposedly his interior decorator. She gets out of a cab. And it's okay. Sorry, I guess so. Okay, let me back up here. So Holly did not actually leave this guy, who, by the way, Holly just. Oh, okay. Hold on, the battery. Hold on. Okay. So Holly did not actually. This guy was not actually left alone in Holly's apartment. She was in a rush, and she did exit the door first, but he followed her down to the street where a taxi cab arrived, and out came a woman that... So Holly called this man Fred because she said he reminded her of her brother. But he said, my name's not Fred. I think his name was Paul. It's funny because it's very funny because I genuinely don't remember his name. All I remember was Fred, which is very much like, the movie is very much all about Holly, all about Audrey Hepburn's character. Like, at least for me, it was all about her. And it was fun. It's funny that I now can't remember his real name, because there was even a point in the movie where he tries to say, like, that's not my name. My name's not Fred, to multiple different people. Like, everyone, eventually thinks his name is Fred, and he just kind of gives up. And it's crazy because I can't remember his name, and I just think it's Fred. Like, and for the purpose of, like, whatever, it just is Fred. Because it's like, we're all living, it's kind of like the movie, it's Breakfast at Tiffany's, that's a beautiful title for the movie. And the movie is all about this girl in New York City, Holly. That's what the movie's about, Holly. So, we're going to call him Fred. Sorry, Fred. I know it's not your name, but, like, you're living in her world, and your name's Fred. So, We're now down at the street where Fred is trying to call her a cab, and a cab actually pulls up, and out of the cab gets a woman who, gets out and is all affectionate and kissy with Fred. And so Holly, this is the first time where we see like, oh, okay, this is, yeah, for sure. Holly does take a liking to Fred, because Holly's kind of like gives a eyebrow like, okay, handsome man who was just helping me get ready. I didn't think that you'd have somebody like this. But lo and behold, he does. And we begin to, and the women kind of eye each other down, right? Because it's, Fred is a handsome guy, all right? You must admit. And it's funny because this is a very funny part in the movie, because they have their little interaction where they see each other and like, it's like, good to see you. And Holly's watching. And then I found it very interesting because Holly says something like, okay, are you guys finished now? Or something like that. Or like, okay, like, is this over now? Or something like very backhanded, where like, it's crazy because I thought that was very funny because no one was waiting. Like, it very much shows you how like Holly's living in her world, because nobody, like, what do you mean, are you guys finished? Like, why did she have to wait for them to finish chatting for her to get in the cab? It's like, for her to make her exit, she had to first make sure everyone knew that she was exiting, and her exit being getting into her cab, getting into the cab that the woman that Fred is now affectionate with just got out of. Holly had to make sure that they both were aware that she was leaving. It was very much like she said something just to say it. I was very much like, oh, interesting. And so these two go up the stairs of the building. Holly's gone in her cab to see her mafia man, and Fred and his interior designer walk up the steps, and she tells him like, oh, I've actually took the liberty before you even got here. I went ahead and I already decorated the whole place. Hopefully you like it. If you don't, we'll tear it all down and start again. And so they're up there, and they're talking, and they're going about the things and doing the things. And then Holly gets home, and there's the drunk man that follows her, and she's in the bathroom, and then she comes out on the fire escape, and it's nighttime, and she goes up, and she immediately can see into the window of Fred's place, right in his bedroom, to his bed. And Fred is asleep, but she sees the same woman in green that she saw get out of the cab and walk up with him, his supposed interior designer, kiss him on the forehead, walk over and put some money down on his table and exit. And so she's very much eavesdropping and very much interested. And once the woman is gone, she lets herself in through the window, which is very on key with Holly's character so far. She just lets herself into someone she just met's house. Maybe that was normal in the 50s. I don't know. But it was very much just like, wow, like we're living in Holly's world, right? And Holly is very much like super affectionate towards Fred. She wakes him up. He is startled. She comments on how his interior designer paid him money. And then, they exchange very much flirting words. They're very affectionate towards one another. This is like the initial flame, and it's very hot. And like, Fred is in his bed, and she's just wearing a robe. I think Fred's probably naked. I don't know. It seemed like he was, at least. He grabbed the covers once, like, I'm naked, but shall I get you something to Holly, asks Fred if he'd want something to drink in Fred's place, which is just funny, but she pours some whiskey. It's much too strong for her. They both light up their own cigarette, and the whiskey is much too strong for her. She doesn't quite like it. And there's a scene where she walks over to a plant with her back turned to him while he's still in bed this entire time, because she woke him up, and she pours out like 75% of the whiskey glass into a plant, which is then, which is then you must think like, well, Holly must at the very least care a bit for what Fred thinks of her, because this is very much up until this point, you're kind of like, Holly doesn't give a damn what anyone thinks about her. Holly's just living her life. She's a cat that she's given no name, that she just calls Cat. Holly is unapologetically herself. So when I see her pour the whiskey out, I think to myself, so you do like this fellow you call Fred. And after that, she crawls into bed with him, and they put their glasses down on the nightstand, and she says, "Oh, I'm just so cold and so tired," and she explains to him how there's a man downstairs whom at this point has definitely left, but there was a time where he did make a crash, but it's been a while since that, and he probably left, and she could probably go back downstairs, but she insists on staying with Fred in his bed, and so she does, and he says, "Well, that's fine by me," and she lays her head down on his chest in a position that I could only assume for Fred was much uncomfortable, and Fred probably would not be able to get some good sleep like that. But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Let me stray from the movie review and recap for just a moment to say that if Audrey Hepburn laid her head on my chest, I would not move for a million years. And so Fred is, they go to bed. And then Fred wakes up. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, it was almost more than sex. They slept together, right? Like, just because they didn't have sex, like, it's almost more romantic than having sex. Or like sometimes movies will like fade to black when they're like in the bedroom, but they both fell asleep and they didn't have sex, but it's almost like more than that, because these two strangers that just met just spent the night in the same bed, and it's like clear that they really love each other. And now you're really hooked on the movie. You're like, what is next, So the sun rises, the morning comes, and Fred wakes up with a big smile on his face, but Holly is gone. So Fred, I think, goes down to her apartment, trying to find her. And okay, this is where I have to really think and remember what happened in this movie. Fred. So obviously she woke up before him and left, right? And that's a very telltale sign of like someone's, to flee in the morning. It's like you think you made a mistake, and it's like, but Fred doesn't care. And I don't know if that necessarily meant what it used to in the 50s. I don't know. So Fred goes his whole day just sort of thinking about her. And he gets back to his place, and there's a note that she's left him on his box. Well, I think he lets himself into Holly's place before he goes out in the town to get groceries, and she's not there at all. And she's like, "Holly, hello, Holly," and she's just gone. So it's funny. She left the bed early, and then she's not home, and you're thinking like, that's so interesting, because she was so like, she crawled into bed with this guy, and now she's nowhere to be found. But she makes up for it, because Fred comes back home with his groceries in his hand to find a note at his buzzer for his apartment number that says, "Fred, I'd love to have you over for drinks around 6-ish. And so he's like, a big smile crosses his face, and he's like, "Then that's what I'll do." And 6-ish rolls around, and we cut to Holly's place. And I almost had to do a double take, because the scene cuts, and it is, filled with people, filled with these adults getting drunk. There are so many people. There's smoke has filled the air. Everyone is pissed drunk. And I have to do a double take, because I see the couch made out of a bathtub, and I see the same kitchen, and I'm like, are we really in Holly's apartment right now? Like, why is there a party? Like, as the viewer, I'm kind of shocked. I'm like, what? Why is there a party at Holly's place? Like, what? Like, isn't, like, what, did we jump ahead 6 days? Like, I thought that she was having drinks with Fred at 6. And maybe this is just me. Maybe that doesn't mean that she meant solo, but it seemed like it. It was a nice note with a bow. And She even got him a little gift she even got him a gift. And the gift is she got a new ribbon for his typewriter. Whatever ribbon does, I have no idea. But the note is even on top of a little box, and there's ribbon. And he goes up to his apartment and opens that ribbon, and he's like, yeah, nice, I got ribbon. And then, of course, his interior decorator lady comes over again. But then now, of course, it's 6-ish, and it's time to go over. And he knocks on the door, and it opens. A gentleman opens the door, and he sees that it's the party. And I feel like if I was Fred, I'd kind of be like, what? But I feel like I got that, I don't know, I feel like I got that experience just for when the scene cut and there was a party in Holly's place, you know? I feel like I felt what Fred, and then I'm kind of like biting my nails waiting for Fred to show up, like seeing if he's going to be upset, right? Because, or I mean, maybe that's childish of me. But of course, Fred is a gentleman. You know, Fred is a man. So of course he's not upset. Fred does not get upset. You know, he arrives at this party, and he's very much like just goes with it. You know, just meeting strangers, talking to people, and excited when he gets the chance to talk to Holly. And Holly is, you know, drinking, and, you know, she has this super long, very Holly of her, to have this comically long tube to smoke a cigarette out of. And she's very much, this is where, you know, and you know, Fred, I guess, is hoping the night is going to end. Of course, he must be, you know, he never says this or anything, but you hope for Fred the night ends with both of these two characters together. But everyone just keeps getting more and more drunk. Somebody arrives with more alcohol, and then the Chinese man above the apartment calls the cops for real this time because it's that loud. And the cops show up, and right as the cops are showing up, Fred goes to look out the window to see if it truly is the cops, you know, walking into the building. And not only does he see the cops coming up, but he sees Holly leaving her own apartment as the cops show up, which is crazy. And she's leaving with the gentleman that she pointed out to Fred in the midst of the party earlier as the 9th richest man in North America, supposedly. And Holly is very much like, you know, she's having sex with these guys for money, and she's very much like, I want to marry the richest guy ever and live happily ever after, right? And Fred, I think, it knows that that's not what she wants, but like he's still just happy to even experience her presence. So he doesn't, you know, he's very gentle, like he's an extreme gentleman. So he does not, you know, he fares away from criticism or lecture. He just simply lets her speak and soaks in as much as he can of her and is grateful for her to be speaking to him, it seems. So here he watches her leave her own party as it's about to get busted, and he's like, scratches his head, and he's like, what the hell? But then he just kind of, you know, carries on with his ways, and he grabs this Brazilian man that mentioned to him earlier, you know, could not get caught by the cops, and he takes this man through the bathroom. That's a very funny scene where they see this couple macking in the shower, and the guy is much shorter than the girl, but it's just like, it's very funny, I guess. And they leave through the window, the fire escape. So then, I think we cut to the best scene in the entire movie. The best scene in the entire movie. And that's Fred at his place, hearing a beautiful song coming from the window. And that song goes, by the way, it's Holly down sitting on her porch. She is dressed like the woman from she has a bandana tied around her hair, and she's wearing a short sleeve shirt, and like a long skirt or something, and it's just like the baking soda woman, the woman, strong woman, the woman with her muscle out like this. It's just like that famous picture of that woman that with her bicep out like that. It's like woman tough. She's on the box of the baking soda, the orange baking soda, if you know what I'm talking about. And for this scene, they've dressed Holly up as that. And I think that was beautiful to do, and it makes a lot of sense because lately we've just been seeing her in these dresses and this fancy makeup with these earrings and these, all this stuff and these heels. But it's important to remind the audience that Holly is like very much like at least in her mind, in control completely of her life. And it's also a bit of a juxtaposition because dressed like this, we find her sitting on her windowsill singing this beautiful song like a siren. I've spoken about this, the sirens that used to draw men into the water supposedly in like Greek tales. She had a voice to kill 1,000 men. I mean, this is the song she sings. She goes, "Moo," and her face is glowing and sparkling. I don't even know how they did that with the camera, but I don't know. It's like her face, she's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and it just hits your ears, and it goes, "Moon River, wider than the mile, I'm crossing you with style." I feel like I should almost play it. But I wouldn't want to get copyrighted. Moon River, wider than the mile. And so she sings that song, and it's beautiful. And of course, it lures Fred to the window, and he stares at her as she sings. And she doesn't notice he's there for a while, and she finally looks up at him, and she goes, "Hi." Oh. And he says, "Hey." So, I can't remember what happens next. I think after that interaction with them both, I can't remember. I can't quite remember. I think they go. I think this is when they go. I don't know, but it's beautiful how, I'd like to say this. The only time she steps foot at Fred's place is when she comes at her own curiosity and exploration. Holly is very much like a wild animal, and it's like a stray cat, right? And if you hope to make a stray cat yours, it's kind of up to the cat. Like, you're never going to catch the cat if you try. Cats are faster than you. It's going to run away, and you're never going to get it. But sometimes you'll just be sitting down, and the cat will come up and nuzzle its face against you. And I feel like it was very symbolic that Holly entered Fred's apartment and then never went back there again. After he sees her singing, I think they go and they have an out on the town. There's a man that's suspiciously waiting outside the apartment, and you think for a second like, oh, this is probably mafia related, but it turns out that because Fred says, okay, I'll go investigate, to his interior designer who spotted him, and he goes down there and he sees the guy and walks, and the guy follows him. And so he's like, what the hell? And he walks very far, and the guy just keeps on following him until all of a sudden, they're at this crazy park with like tons of benches. It's this beautiful place for this scene to transpire. And he sits on the bench, and out of all the benches, this man walks up and sits right next to him. And so Fred finally turns to his left and says, "Okay, what's your deal?" And the guy says, "Please, you'll have to excuse me, but I'm here to see about," what was her name? June. What was her real name? He gives a completely different name, and Fred's like, "What, you mean Holly?" And he's like, "If that's what she calls herself now." And then you see that, like, this man is supposedly her husband. And you realize that Holly ran away from a past life, and she's here, she's here because it's a new life. And you're like, what? This is crazy, this is crazy. And yeah, so he asks for a favor. He says, "I don't want to startle her. Will you kind of help bridge the gap? Because she knows you here. So will you help me see her?" And he says, "Sure thing." Fred's obviously kind of heartbroken, right? Because now he's learning that she's married. And he's kind of upset too. So they go back to the place. Fred knocks on the door. She opens, and Fred calls her by her real name. And she's like, "Well, who told you?" And she says, "Where is he?" Right? Because she figures, oh, if he knows my real name, then he must have learned from my husband, who must be here. And so, there he is. And Holly's very much like trying to take control of the situation, right? So he says, "Well, you must come home with me. You must come home with me." Or she's very happy to see him at the start. She gives him lots of affection and goes and hugs him. And then he says, "Okay, you're going to come home with me." And I think she knows the whole time she's not going to go home with him. She's not going to return to her last life, ever. So, she she tries to get Fred to help her because the guy's already bought the train ticket for her, and they're at the train station, and she's even packed her luggage, I guess. And she says, "Fred, you have to come with me, because I'm not going to go home with this guy. I don't want to go home with my husband. I don't want to." But the only way for him to accept that is if we're already at the train station and he gets on the train and I tell him. So Fred says, "Okay." And then in the terminal at the train station, she kind of just like has this moment where she's like, "Okay, Fred, you have to tell him I'm not going to go home. I'm not going to go home." And Fred very much looks up at the other gentleman, and the gentleman looks back at him, and her old husband looks at Fred and says, "It's okay, son. I appreciate you trying to help out, but I'll speak to her now." And he's like, "Okay." It's very much like a gentlemanly exchange. And it's very like 50s. I feel like love and romance and like women's place in the world used to be very different. And so she leaves, and yeah, she leaves, and well, this is the end of the episode. So I'll wrap it up. He goes home without her, and Fred takes Holly, and the movie kind of is just now beginning, I guess, because you kind of are getting this sense of who Holly is. And this is the end of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you when I see you. That'll probably be probably be next episode or something. No shit. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you thought about 3/4 of this episode being a movie review. Peace out.